Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of Cracking the Code to Your Challenges. Every Friday we host this episode, and this is for you guys. This is for you to be able to tell us the problems that you're having and let us mastermind on them and help you out on your real estate problems. My name is Diana Lizarazo, and my co-host is Elizabeth Kelly. And so like that, this show is there to help you all. So if you ever have any problems that you ever want us to help crack the code on, then this is the show for you. You can go on to Refam. It's called, the website is as if I, for some reason I forget, realestateinvestingfam.com. You can go there, you can send a message of what it is that the problem you're having on. You can also even send anonymous messages too, or anonymous posts, and you can share with us what is going on, because not only can we help you find out the problems here on the show, but there are a lot of experts on there too that can also help you to solve the problems you come up with. So we're all here to mastermind. I can see Elizabeth is on. Let's get her on the stage. Let's send her some fire. Let's send her some love. Let's get her on. You guys hear that noise? That was weird. There we go. Hey,
Yeah,
how are you?
I'm great. How are you
I'm
doing?
good. I'm good. Um, Excited for what we're going to talk about today. I feel like I don't have very much experience on it, but I feel like I would give my point of view on how I would see how to do things, and I'm curious to hear what your point of view would be. So the one that I'm talking about today, or the one that I'm seeing today, I think it actually is kind of nice. I was able to see both sides of the thing. And I'm curious to see again, how people can prevent this from happening. And then also, if you're in it, what can you do now that you're in it? So this project is going through a foreclosure, it's being sold right now. They're looking to sell it. And it's been possessed by the bank. And looks like what they were planning to do was they wanted to build a building out of it. So it's a residential, and they went through various. So permits weren't done on the building yet, and uh, and then there's two mortgages on title. So there's a first mortgage of 700, and then another one for like 150 and behind it. And doing some digging on it, I find it very interesting because I'm going to just actually, I guess, just dive into my point of view of the things that I've seen. So the property was purchased for 670, I believe is what it was, 2 years ago. And it was very interesting to see that, because the amounts of the loans are quite high. Because when I look at what it is worth now, I think it's worth a little bit less. I don't know, for example, like how much value you put onto a variance, for example. So I don't really know that. But in my point of view, when I was looking at this property, I see it, for example, in the low 600s is what my point of view looks like. And I say that because even if it were to be something that's developed, with the price of things being so expensive and the time it takes to get permits, you're probably not going to see that for a good, I'm assuming, again, I don't know how long it takes. Like it's like variance for a 20-unit building. So I don't know how long that would take to go through the permits. But to me, I feel like that's probably a 20 year, a 2 year type of process. So I want to kind of have some contingencies of being able to handle maintaining that property for those 2 years until even you're able to go into the construction side of things. And another thing I wanted to say that I've noticed, because I've kind of done some research on how big development companies do it, and I've always found it very interesting how the little development companies do it. because of this instability of the time frames, where who knows how long it could take a variance, who knows how long it's going to take permits, who knows if you can even get what you want to get out of it. So to me, I kind of like the approach that the bigger companies take, and they really get everything funded, and there's no interest payments at all. You don't pay interest payments, and it's just pure equity until it goes to a construction loan. And usually, so while you're in the process of like, let's say you're going through zoning variances, let's say, and then going to permits, the way the big development companies do it is they're not paying any interest on anything until they actually start to break ground. And then that's when they get the construction loan to put on, and then it pays out the money that's owed. But even that money that's paid out to their money people, they still don't get it until actually the first phase of the houses or whatever it is starts like selling, or whatever the plan is. So I felt like saying that as I feel like if you're getting into development and you're seeing like all these different things, like you're having to do zonings, you're having to do, unless if you can get that property rented out and maintaining the expenses for an undetermined amount of time, I kind of like the approach that the big development companies take. What are your views of what I said?
Um,
Like that, I don't have any experience in development, so I was just like my guesses on what things would happen.
yeah. No, development is not my area of expertise at this point either, but I feel like it's really easy to kind of step back and look at some of the companies and some of the people who are really struggling right now and to look at where they're struggling. And I think you're absolutely right. You pinpointed it's that holding period. And one of the biggest issues that people are having right now is they may have pockets that are deep enough to withstand that period from from closing to approval and groundbreaking, but you need really deep pockets because there's so much uncertainty right now. And I mean, I'm looking at people and they're trying to refinance, and the banks are lending like 55 and 60%. So they're not able, like, if that was the scenario, I mean, those lenders, they're not getting their money back. They're not getting paid out. And this is part of the sort of long-term impact, this kind of collapse of the financing opportunities. And land development, to be perfectly honest, is one of those strategies that's become really glamorized and really sexy lately. But there's not enough people talking about the fact that you can lose your shirt because you do not monetize with that strategy until you're at the end and you're renting. You're able to sell off parcels, or you're able to rent units out that are done. So the pockets, that the amount of capital you have to have behind you, and if you're borrowing that capital to have deep enough pockets, then it can become really challenging because now you're borrowing money to make your interest payments, and by definition it starts to really look like a Ponzi scheme.
Yeah, exactly. It's something that I feel like a lot of people are teaching how to do development is through getting like the whole thing you say with the burrs where you say like no money in the deal. I, I don't think you should be doing that with development. I mean, I don't think you should be doing them with any of them unless you get a super amazing deal. But I feel like developments is even worse to go no money in, and or even just, yeah, I don't know. That's actually always been my concerns, and I'd love to hear if anyone in the audience has any comments about it or have done it, because that's always actually been my concern, is that I actually never wanted to go in a private in a development if it came up because of the uncertainty. Like we were doing work on a house, and the other house beside was again completely that one was owned. It was going through permits. They had been waiting for permits, and I'm assuming they must have done zoning and other things too, or variances. But they were waiting 5 years. Now, again, those people again paid cash, so no one's worried about anything because there's a few investors in there, and they're not worried about losing their money. But and then the bigger the project, that's why I think, for example, if you're going from a house to like a 20 unit building, to me is just like it's probably going to take a lot of time, and going into private and kind of that mentality that I always hear people teaching of like, oh, like you can get permits within 6 months, and then like they make it seem like it's so simple, and it's really like actually a lot more complicated. It seems like to me again, I'm talking out of experience, no experience, but it's just like you hear some of the projects going
Yeah.
on, and especially like you said, like right now everyone's obsessed with doing developments, and I kind of just wanted to talk about this because I'm not sure how if they're still teaching it like they were teaching it in COVID. Maybe I would hope not, because things aren't again not as easy as like people were saying over back then. Um, because now it's like not only are you dealing with interest rates being higher, but like renovations or like construction is that's still all expensive.
Yeah.
What are your comments?
Yeah. Yeah, I think absolutely. Anytime you're looking at strategies right now where the end value is important to you, when you're in a market like this that is, has been trending down and, it looks to me like it's starting to begin the recovery process, but I don't think I wouldn't consider it more of like a reliable or predictable market until we start to see the interest rates actually start to drop. But I think that we have to be really careful when we're counting on strategies or when we're utilizing strategies where where end value matters and we've been in a declining market. Because, you end up in a situation, like you said, they bought the house for 670, and, the natural market appreciation has eroded the value down to 600. And they've borrowed obviously well beyond what the property is worth. So you look at that, and we don't, as a private lender or as a partner, I have to know and understand that this is a more advanced strategy before I commit to lending funds. Like whether I'm
Mm-hmm.
the lender, whether I'm the borrower, you have to make sure. I want to see a business plan. As a lender on this deal, I would want to have seen a business plan. Like, what do you think your year by year breakdown? What do you think your costs are going to be? How long do you think this is going to take? And then I want to see like a 30% buffer or a 50% buffer. So you think it's going to take 18 months? I want to see what your numbers are going to look like if it takes you 24 months to get, the variance done and the permitting approved. A lot of people don't understand that some strategies generate cash flow and others don't. And typically, land development is a strategy that does not generate cash flow. It gives you a cash infusion at the end. It will help you build wealth, but you have to have a plan for how you are going to get through that period of time where you have literally nothing coming in and you are pouring money out. You're paying taxes, you're paying insurance, you may or may not be paying interest or fees or whatever it is, but you're going to have those costs. So, have you ever played the cash flow game?
No, I've never played it. I have the game, but I have no one to play with. My husband won't play
Oh
with me.
my goodness. You need to start hosting cash flow game nights because so many of the concepts in there, when I was a trainer for Rich Dad, we used to host, so my class was 3 days long, and we used to host cash flow game nights, and there'd be like 50 people who would come on the Saturday night. Everybody would, have a drink and have some nibblies and play cash flow. And the basic concepts that are taught in that game are so fundamental. And I feel like it really helps you kind of understand the basic numbers and the basic finances behind some of the different investment strategies and how to get financial freedom. And the reality is, land development is something that you're going to put a lot of money into with an anticipated or a hoped for gain at the end. And there's no
Mm-hmm.
guarantees. Like these people, even if they foreclosed or power of sale took the house back, the person in second position is totally out of luck. And the
Yeah.
person in first position, they're going to recapture a fraction. And the reality is, they might decide that they want to hold on to the property and they want to try and do what the other people did, but they're still going to need hundreds of thousands of dollars at a minimum.
Mm-hmm. It's already like that the house is worth less than what because it's 700 that they put.
Yeah,
So it's like they probably put all their money in
yeah.
and may not have enough to pay for because it's very expensive. Again, I don't really know, but I'm pretty sure it's very expensive to even get the permits for a 20-unit building.
Yeah.
Is it not? Like, do you know how much? Like, I feel like it's in the 100,000 type of thing, isn't it?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely,
Yeah.
hundreds of thousands of dollars, and it depends on the size of the property and the location, and whether there's already utilities there that are at the road, and all these different factors. But the thing that makes me super concerned about this as a strategy right now, unless you're someone like Karina Guzman who has done this, Victor Minash, like these guys, they know what they're doing. They're in the land development space all the time. But what concerns me right now fundamentally is the uncertainty around the financing at the end. Like, could you imagine if you had this whole idea and you created this whole project? And I've seen it now with two different borrowers, where they get to the end, the valuation is coming in low because the appraisers are being conservative, and the banks are coming in low. Like, I'm talking 55% loan to value. Like,
Mm-hmm.
those people, that private money that's borrowed, what is the plan to get them out?
Yep. Yeah.
Because their money costs more, and you've done it, you've borrowed the money. Some of the interest rates that I'm seeing out there, like 17-18%. Please understand, if you are lending money at 17 and 18%, it's because it's risky. It's because you may not get your money back the way you had anticipated, and we'll cross our fingers and toes and hope that you get it back, but it might not be on the timelines that you had thought.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and that's another thing actually that you're saying that is so important is um, I I noticed a lot of people were doing it last year, and I think that's how they were able to maybe sustain until this year. And then now we're seeing a lot more foreclosures happen is because people borrowed on seconds. Because I had a lot of people asking even me, like, oh, I need enough money to just make it to the spring selling season. And I was like, and so I'm feeling that that may have been what also happened in this, right? You had your first on there, and that 100 was hopefully to last them,
Yeah.
like you said, the payment to pay throughout until they're, I guess, hoping that the permits would make it through,
Yeah.
and but then there's no permits at all. So who knows how long the variance actually took to get done. And like that, because of the valuation of the house going down, and this house is not in a place where it's like an appreciation. Because I feel like there's actually quite a few places in the GTA that are still doing quite well. So it's not one of those, so even worse, because like that to me, I'm just like, I don't know if the having the variance is helping for the valuation or not, because it's because of just like everything else that is involved. Like you still have to get permits anyways. That's I feel like that's probably the most expensive part of everything.
Yeah, I mean, to me, these kinds of deals, these are not the type of deals that you do if you don't have a ton of experience. There's certain municipalities like Calgary right now is super friendly for people who want to add units, do variances and basement suites and all this other kind of stuff. Calgary is like, come here, build more units. We want to have you. There's a lot of municipalities out there. Like St. Catharines really has a reputation for just being absolutely horrible to work with.
Yeah,
Um,
I've
and I
heard
was
that
talking
too.
to someone the other day, and they were saying it was 900 days, like
Oh
to
wow.
get a variance through, like 900 days in this municipality. And if you haven't done your research and you don't know what the average timelines are and you haven't built those relationships, then it really is super challenging to get stuff like this done. And if you don't know how to run the numbers correctly, and if you aren't confident about where the market is going to end up, then you could really be setting yourself up for trouble. So if you want to get into land development, it can be a fantastic strategy. I mean, it's typically something where you don't necessarily have to deal with tenants, and there's a lot of kind of other pieces that go on that can be really rewarding for you. The opportunity to create new housing and support a community and those kinds of things. But I think you really should be working with someone, partnering with someone who has done it before
And
and
any
knows where the biggest
time
risks can come.
probably, right?
Yeah.
Like good enough experience that they can actually really advise on it, because even different areas, like you said, even different areas can have just like different regulations, different timelines, all that can really impact.
Yeah.
I also just want to give Barb a shout out, and actually I wasn't sure, I don't know if you understand. I said park fees can be really expensive as well. You have to pay park fees for getting for developments.
Yeah, so these would be like like Greenland fees or whatever they're called, but basically you have to pay a certain amount towards developing parklands and green spaces as part of your like development plan, because obviously you're taking away those kinds of spaces. So like if you think of it the way, let's say for example you build a subdivision, the municipalities say a certain percentage of that land must have like parkland on it. You can't build the entire thing wall to wall. Otherwise, it doesn't create a very nice space where people want to live. And it's harmful to the environment.
Yeah. Actually, that makes me actually it's funny you talk about that one because that made me want that kind of leads nicely into my other one actually. So there's another one where this one was a cottage and it was in a flood zone. Again, they didn't have experience in knowing. They're just like, oh, 100-day flood zone is probably okay. And and that ended up causing actually a lot of problems with getting the permits done. And also, this place was not inhabited for I think like 15 years or something, and it was used more like storage. So it was there was so much in there
Mm-hmm.
that they couldn't. So the estimates that they did on the renovations were not enough for what actually once they emptied everything out, what was enough for actually what needed to be done, and what the city ended up coming in to tell them that they had to get done. And this one, it didn't go to the point of foreclosure. They were able to sell it off with a loss to themselves, like they paid out all their investors. But they still lost. But I was thinking the same thing. For example, that was one of the things that they didn't realize was the flood zone. They didn't actually look into that. They knew about it, but they didn't look into the ramifications of that or how it can impact things or how it. Yeah, it didn't. They just like you have like when you're going into something like exactly what you're saying, right? It's like you have to go in either with people that know and have that experience, or I don't know what the other or is. There's no other or. Like you have to be with people that know what they're doing because it's just same thing. Like Cottage Town was also areas that don't appreciate as much, and so it just ended up being more of a problem. And they ended up realizing that they actually overpaid for the price of the property. They thought they were getting a stellar deal because all the renovated houses were like more than a million, I think 1.5. And so they're like, oh, 500, that's amazing, so much. But then you don't realize like how expensive it is to actually get everything that they need to get done to get it to that point. And they realized that actually it was so expensive that they just had to sell it off because of the amount of problems that it came with.
Yeah, for sure. You really highlighted two very common mistakes that new investors make. One of which is knowing how to do proper due diligence. So my husband is an engineer. He's an environmental and a chemical engineer. And so without one of the first things in his due diligence process is he goes to his flood maps and takes a look at, is this in a floodplain? What does this look like? There's a lot of due diligence that you should be doing before you buy a property. The second thing I see that happens a lot, and I've seen an escalation in it in the last few years, is people manipulate numbers. And it's because they want so badly to get into a deal that instead of looking at true numbers and instead of spending, $500 or $1,000 to hire an engineer to look at something, or instead of getting, multiple contractors in to quote a job and to say, what do I need to know about this? What do you think the full scope of work should be on this project? They're so emotionally involved in just getting a deal that they make bad decisions.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And they
Or
are.
even the numbers like that, like when you see such a difference, they think that it is such an amazing deal, but don't realize. And it was on the market for a long time, so I felt like you got time to check things out. I feel a lot of people also get this worry of, oh my God, what if someone steals it? I gotta just grab it and take it now, and I'm just like, relax,
Yeah.
make sure that you know everything that's going on with it. And understanding what it means and maybe talking to a few people about it, because like when they spoke to someone about it, the floodplain, I don't remember what they told me about what the actual issues were behind it. But when they before purchasing it, it was like not a big deal because it only happens like once every 100 years. So it's not a big deal or anything. But then I can't remember what it was. But once they started going through the process, it ended up being a big deal. So maybe also when it's something new again, I mean, go with people that have experience in it, but talk to a few people
Yeah.
also, because sometimes people are just trying to get your business.
Yeah. And it's things like, it doesn't even have to be stuff that's costly. If you make sure you get your insurance quoted before you put in an offer, or you call your insurance company and say, hey, what do I need to know about this? What is the premium that I should anticipate with this? And then you say, why is it so high? Or why is it so low? Because the insurance people will tell you, well, it's in a floodplain and, so we've added this extra surcharge because we consider it higher risk. Like when your insurance company goes, you know what? We're charging you extra for sewer backup because it's happening a lot. You don't go, oh, I don't want to pay for that coverage. You go, sign me up because I don't want to be in a situation where I have a sewer backup because they're happening more. And now I'm in a situation where I don't have any coverage for this. Like, to me, this is part of a lot of investors. When they start out by looking at MLS or realtor.ca, and they're literally like, I'm just going to go find properties. And there's a specific order. You should be building a team of experts around you to teach you and to share with you what you don't know already before you're out there, running numbers and looking at properties. Mm-hmm. You should know how to analyze the market and see, is there enough employment base to support this? There's all kinds of things going on right now that are kind of anomalies. Investors have actually warped or changed the performance of certain markets. Like, look at New Brunswick, right? The price of buildings went through the roof in the last few years. That wasn't that people in New Brunswick are suddenly like, I want to buy a multifamily. That's literally investors from Toronto going out there and buying properties. So that was an artificial inflation, and it's going to correct.
100%. Completely agree. And just like a disclaimer for people that are contractors, because I've seen this also happen, is just because you're a contractor, it doesn't mean that you know everything. Because it's like sometimes you see, like, I don't know, I think it maybe get like a little overconfident with all maybe the renos, and then you decide to go to like the developments thinking like, I know how to build a house, but you forget about the rest of it,
Yeah.
So
yeah,
don't be
absolutely.
confident too. I don't know what it was, but it was just something like I was just like, you've got to make sure you know every side of it. And I feel like that reminds me of the E-Myth. It's like just because you're in the E-Myth, you're the technician, doesn't mean you know all the other sides of things too. And it's very important to just make sure you're well-rounded, or you have people to make you well-rounded to make the decisions.
Yeah. And it's not just that you have a collection of people around you, but it's that you're open to feedback too. In order to become a better investor and a better entrepreneur, we have to become better people. We have to be willing to take that feedback and the information that we might not want to hear, to have someone tell us, hey, you know what? You're not factoring this in, or you're not giving enough weight to this here, to this particular consideration.
100%.
Barb thinks you're funny. She liked your contractor joke.
I feel like it's fun to know a lot of investors of different kinds, but it's also at the same, because you learn from them, but then sometimes you start I want to at least learn from their mistakes. No, I was like, I will not do that. Okay. Note to self,
Yeah.
That's the point of this, guys, learn from everyone else's mistakes.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, that's why you hire coaches. That's why you network with other people, is, to be open to the idea that, not everybody's going to do everything perfectly the first time. What are the most common mistakes, and how do I navigate around those?
100%. Elizabeth, thank you so much. It's always so much fun to chat with you. And if you guys love what you hear, and if you guys love what's going on and you want to stay up with Elizabeth, you can follow her. She'll be tagged on here. And if you love my shows and you want to let us know what's going on, I mean, I'll be tagged on here, but also you can get me on Refam and you can share what problems you're coming up with. And we're always happy to give advice and give our point of views. And same thing, there's people on Refam that can also give their advice, because I mean, I feel like as many people, as many eyes as you can get on it, I think is the most important, because you'll get a lot of different points of view. Elizabeth, thank you so much.
You're so welcome. Thank you. Bye, everyone. Have a great weekend.
Bye, everyone.